Welcome to the 10-Minute Treasure. My name is Jeff Pospisil. And it was about a year ago at this time that the United Methodist denomination, those of us that were working in it, we knew that a split was going to come sooner than later. And I was part of a task force at that time in the Dakotas that the bishop had put together to help us make a good split, that make it as good as it can be. I mean, an amicable split is what I heard. And one of the principles that came to us is that we really wanted to help churches and pastors find a good home. And I have a video on that, and I'll link to that in the description. But the whole idea is that you know what a good home feels like. A good home is a place where you feel accepted and encouraged and loved, and you just fit in. And you can often do your best work when you are at your good home. And that's what we hope for churches. So over the last year, I've had the opportunity to first just go to churches and explain the disaffiliation process. So I visited a number of churches that way while I was still conference treasurer. And then after I left that position, I was able to present on behalf of the Global Methodists. So that lets you know where my bias is, by the way. But one of the great opportunities I had was I was able to present alongside some United Methodists. So I presented alongside friends of mine like Keith Nelson and Dane Zackerson, and they did a wonderful job presenting the case for why you should stay United Methodist. And this picture actually is from a presentation Dane and I did in Jamestown. So I'm going to link to that in the description so you can watch for yourself. But over the course of those discussions and over the course of those conversations that I've had with churches, it occurred to me that there are some differences, that there are at least three questions that if you asked yourself as a church, one would tend to show that you probably would naturally fit more in the Global Methodist, and the other way you would fit more in the United Methodist denomination. And so hopefully I'm sharing this with you that it will help you think through that decision if that's what you're doing. The first question, when you think of the basic nature of a person, so the nature that they are born with, do you see that original goodness or original sin? Original goodness or original sin? And if you tend to lean more towards seeing the original goodness, you see that people are made in the image of God, that they have an ability to appreciate beauty, understand morality, and there is just that imprint of God on them that needs to be preserved and protected, especially from those corrupting forces in society. And that's really one of the big focuses then is how do we help fix those things in society that are damaging that image of God in us, that original goodness. If you lean more towards the original sin side, what you see is that people are born with a bent towards evil, and that continually. That even their best efforts end up being selfish and harmful to the people around them. And that is what we need to fix mostly, is we need to fix whatever is bent inside of them so that they don't damage the people around them. So that's the first question. Are people originally good, or are they originally sinful? For the second question, what do you see the role of the pastor? How do you view the role of the pastor? Is the pastor more like a shepherd or a lead sheep? So either one of these, by the way, the sheep will follow if there's no shepherd around, those sheep will follow the lead sheep wherever the lead sheep goes. If there is a shepherd around, I imagine that they would follow the shepherd wherever the shepherd goes. So how do you view the pastor? Is the pastor more like the shepherd, where they are separate and called and consecrated for special duties? And so there is a little bit of a separation between the pastor and the congregation. Or is the pastor more like the lead sheep, where yes, the pastor has special duties and everything else, but there's less of a separation? You cling more to that idea of the priesthood of all believers. And that really, if the pastor couldn't do it, if the pastor wasn't available, anybody should be able to step up, or somebody, at least from the flock, should be able to step up. So is the pastor more like a shepherd or the lead sheep? The last question, and I think this is the question that's most indicative of where your church belongs, where it'll find its good home, is this question. When you're seeking spiritual truth, do you tend to believe that spiritual truth is rediscovered or being discovered? So rediscovered or being discovered. And if you primarily see spiritual truth as rediscovered, you look back. You tend to look back into the history of Christianity and maybe of your denomination. You're wondering, what did John Wesley say? What did the Desert Fathers say? What did those founders of our faith say? As well as, what does a plain reading of the Bible say? So you have a tendency to look back. If you tend to see spiritual truth as being discovered, you see how truth has been emerging over time, that we seem to be growing in our understanding of different things, and that also applies to our spiritual understanding of truths. That when we look more ahead than we do look back. So, and we look internally too. So we want to think about our experiences, we want to reason about it, and we want to see what is being discovered. And that includes spiritual discoveries. If you've taken these three questions, well, where do you fit in? Chances are you fit in better in the Global Methodist denomination if you see the pastor as the lead sheep, if you see the original sin in people, if you think of spiritual truth as being rediscovered. You would fit in probably better in the United Methodist denomination if you see the pastor as the shepherd, and you see the original goodness in people, and you think of spiritual truth as being discovered. And by the way, hopefully I presented this in a way that didn't present any of these as unbiblical, like this one's good and this one's bad. I think you could find biblical support for any of these positions. And in any church, you're probably going to have a little bit of a mix. But in a Global Methodist church, you might have 75% of people that see that original sin and maybe 25% of people seeing that original goodness. And it can kind of balance this out, but it does change a little bit how you're going to function as a church. So again, this is whatever this is a 10-minute video on YouTube, so you can put as much stock in it as you want, but hopefully it helps you think through and maybe even bring up some discussions among your leadership and among your church. Hopefully this has been helpful. I just wanted to give you one more tool to help you in your decision if you are trying to make that decision as a church. I'm also going to put a link to, there's a really good video by Ready to Harvest that explains what all the situation is, and it's coming from a third party, and I think you'll appreciate it if you are behind and don't understand what's going on in the denomination. That'll bring you up to speed. By the way, my contact information, that's my website over on the side there, and there you can find a place to contact me. Till next time, God bless.